Welcome to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Invoice Training Series, presented by the Employer Reporting, Compliance, and Education Division. This video will provide information on the Omitted Employer Invoice. Omitted service occurs when an employee is working in a position that qualifies to participate, but the employer does not correctly report the employee to KPPA. An invoice could be created if the employer fails to report an employee who meets the definition of regular full-time, or a non-participating employee exceeds the statutory limit of the position, or a non-participating employee works at multiple agencies under the same system and meets the definition of regular full-time between all agencies, or finally, the employee has service credit with incomplete contributions and the employer cannot make the months whole. This omitted service may be discovered by the employer, who should alert KPPA to the issue, or during an internal KPPA audit of the member's account. While there may be a variety of situations, the common factor that causes KPPA to create an omitted invoice is that the employer is unable to correct the situation via the monthly report. When an omitted invoice is generated, the employer and employee will receive separate invoices billing for the respective contributions for the misreported salary. The Omitted Employer Invoice can be accessed through the Invoice module of the Report tab in Employer Self-Service. To view the invoice, click the Invoice Number hyperlink. The invoice will be a multi-page document containing the invoice information, billing voucher, and invoice details for a single employee of your agency. These invoices will never contain multiple employees. On the first page of the invoice, the Employer Information section provides the name, employer code, and address for the employer. The Invoice Details section includes the invoice number, due date for payment, and the amount due for the invoice. Below the details are the instructions on how to pay the invoice, which an agency can do either electronically in Employer Self-Service or by mailing a check or money order. If the agency chooses to pay this invoice by check or money order, they need to include the voucher portion of this page along with their payment. Page 2 of the invoice begins with the employer information and the invoice details identical to page 1. Following that, in the Invoice Details section, is information on the dates of the omitted service, the credit that may be added to the member's account for the omitted period, the salary for the omitted period, and the employer's contribution rate and contributions for the salary reported. The total cost is the sum of all employer contributions for the omitted period. Once the invoice is issued, the agency has 30 days from the date of creation to pay the invoice. The due date can be found under the invoice details on page 1. Based on Kentucky Revised Statute 61.552, the employer is required to pay their omitted employer contributions, while the employee has the option to pay the omitted employee contributions. However, both employer and employee contributions must be paid for the employee to receive service credit for the omitted period. Thank you for viewing the Omitted Employer Invoice training. If an agency has questions regarding any of their invoices, they may contact their ERCE team through the employer hotline.